Hey there guys, this is going to be the first part of a 3 to 4 part chicken coop build series where I build a chicken coop from start to finish and take you along every aspect of the process. This coop is going to look very similar to my current chicken coop that you guys have seen in many videos. Visually it's going to be about 95% the same, but I'm aiming to improve on all of the good aspects that I like about that coop and that I've added to it throughout the years. But I'm hoping to make it in a much more seamless, integrated fashion from the ground up. I don't know if that made any sense, but anyway, that's what we're gonna be doing. This video is gonna be just on the basic framing. Then the next videos, I'll add the siding, trim, watering system, and all the other cool stuff. And before we get started, I wanna say thank you to the Home Depot Perspective and Ryobi Power Tools for sponsoring this video. So let's get started. Alright guys, the first step of any project is getting all of your materials and tools in order. So before I start putting nails in wood, let me really quickly go over the materials that I'm using to create the framework of this coop. In total, I purchased 20 2x3s from my local Home Depot, 11 of which will make up the lower framework. You can see all the links that I've cut them to on your screen right now, and the remainder of the 2x3s will be making up the upper truss portion of the roof, as well as the egg box. And for tools, I'm using my drill and driver combo, but you could certainly get away with just using a drill. And then I'm securing everything together with 3-inch deck screws, but you could really use any screws that you might have on hand. And then for quick fastening, I'm using my 16 gauge finish nailer with 2.5-inch nails. And then I'm making most of the cuts with my circular saw. Okay, so at this point I am installing the last of the pre-cut 2x3s, and I'm installing it at the top of this opening, which is going to be my main opening to where I can get in the coop and do any maintenance or anything like that. And there's going to be a big door that slides across this on these barn door rollers. So what I'm doing right now is just making sure that the opening of this is going to be low enough to where it's going to clear the bar that this is going to run on and the door that I'm going to build that'll slide in front of this. So let me install this, and then I'm going to tilt everything up, and it's going to start looking like a structure. Well, all right, at this point we have accomplished a huge task. We have a rectangular structure. I know it doesn't look like a chicken coop yet, but I think it will pretty quickly. I just wanted to point out real quick, I did add some diagonal bracing on the bottom side. Since I'm not building this on a base just yet, I wanted to make sure it stays square. And then the next thing I'm going to do is build some little trusses to make the roof structure, and then I will build the egg box, and I think that might be done for this. I'll walk around and talk to you about what the openings are for and why I chose the spacing I did. Anyway, let's get to the trusses. This is the first of what will be a series of roof trusses that'll make up the roof line of this coop. And what I'm using right now is just a piece of scrap wood so that I can be able to transfer the angle of the outer wall onto the truss. That way these trusses will terminate directly into the outer wall. And when I put my plywood decking on, I won't have any gaps that I would normally have to fill with bird block because I'm going to let the plywood decking overhang to create the edge of the roof line. So let me get these cut, and then I'm going to add a little plywood bracket on these trusses just to give them a little extra strength, and you'll start to see them get installed. The reason I didn't show too much of the actual construction of this egg box is because it is the exact same construction as I've used for this whole coop so far. Just glues, screws, and sometimes some nails to hold things in place. But I will give you a rundown of the dimensions so it makes a bit more sense. This high side is 19 3/4 inches tall, the low side is 15 inches, and the total distance from here to the coop is 18 1/4 inches, and everything slopes at a 15-degree angle. I did cut these pieces on my table saw to match that 15-degree angle, so it's just a nice contiguous surface. And eventually this will get a lid, but I will do that in the next part when I do the plywood and trim. And oh yeah, the distance from here to here is 37 inches, and that was so that it could line up with this vertical support and this vertical support, so I just have something to be able to mount to. All right, so I think that's pretty much it for this one. Well, I think the egg box is going to finish out the last bit of framing for this video. Now I'm going to give you a quick walk around and talk about some of the things that I might not have covered during the earlier portions of this build, specifically the angles of the roof trusses, as well as why I don't have the windows and doors framed up just yet. And then I'll also just review some of the dimensions of the lower portions of framing in case you didn't catch that in the earlier segments of this video. Starting with the lower framework, pretty much all of these dimensions are intended to mirror full sheets of plywood. So that means the distance from the bottom board to the top board is 48 inches. And that is accomplished by having these vertical pieces at 45 inches. And then when you add that to the 1.5 inch thickness of the top and bottom boards, you get 48. The total length of these long sides is exactly 92 3/8 inches. And the reason for that is because once I add the plywood on either side and then all of the trim pieces, it will allow me to use one full sheet of plywood for the top or for the roof portion. And then moving on over to the ends, these are exactly 48 inches wide, and that is accomplished by having these horizontal pieces at 43 inches because I am using 2x3s, so these 2x3s are approximately 2.5 inches in width. So 5 plus 43 again is 48. Moving on up to the trusses, the total angle at the peak of the roof truss is 80 degrees, meaning I cut each one of these boards at 40 degrees. And if you're interested, the total length from the peak of one board down to the end is 31 3/4 inches. And that is just slightly wider than the total 48-inch width of the frame. And the reason for that is to allow for a little bit of an overhang so that when I do end up putting the plywood on here, it will meet flush with the edge of the board. And now I'm going to get to the windows and doors, specifically the ones on the ends of the coop that I do not have framed up yet. And the reason for that is because I'm going to be framing those up once I have the plywood in place. And I do that for two reasons. Number one is because I use the plywood cutout as part of the door that I eventually build to go back in that opening. And then the second reason is that once I have the opening in the plywood, I inset all of my framing material about a 1/2 inch in on the back side of that to create the lip that eventually weatherproofs the door. It'll definitely make more sense in the next video, but just in case you were wondering. Moving on over to the main access door. This door will open up into the coop run, and it'll serve two functions. One will be a sliding barn door style door that I can get in and access and do any maintenance inside the coop. And two, there will be a smaller door within it that'll be the main access door for the chickens to go in and out. This opening is 32 inches wide and just under 35 inches tall. And the reason this one is already framed up is because instead of what I mentioned on these indoors, the weatherproofing will be in the fact that the barn door will overlap on all of the outsides of the opening. And the last little bit of framing to point out is at this end of the coop, and that is down at the bottom of that wall. You can see there's a space that has been left open. It's approximately 14 inches high, and that is where the chicken coop clean out door will go. That way the bedding and chicken poop can be swept out from that end, or with a push broom just pushed from the opposite end of the coop out this door. And as with the other side, there will eventually be a window on this side, as well as probably a little closable vent, probably somewhere about there. All right guys, that is going to do it for this video. I know it probably wasn't the most mind-blowing start to finish as far as creating something out of nothing. I've essentially built a rectangle with triangles on top. But the next part in this series is when I'm going to put the plywood on, do all the trim, and it's really going to start to look like a chicken coop then. That'll probably be the biggest change. And then after that, parts like maybe 3 and 4, I will do the interior, the roost, start to get it to the watering system and things like that. So I appreciate you guys watching. Give me a thumbs up if you like this, and we will see you on the next one.